I've got my like top 3 big reasons as to why I think people get injured in jiu-jitsu. Quick movements, more sport-specific movements, things that are sort of closer to the exposure of the sport, and that increases the brain's ability to react more quickly. Even if you're really, really strong and really, really resilient, you might still get injured. So why is that? And that comes into the other thing that I want to speak about, which is this positional awareness stuff of jiu-jitsu. I've got the best recovery for my clients, my patients: nutrition, sleep, hydration. That's it.
So, Bart, tell us again. Like, I think what's important as well, because you're a physio and you mainly focus in jiu-jitsu injuries, right? And how did you get in jiu-jitsu, and what made you what sparked your interest in specifically jiu-jitsu injuries to treat for your patients?
I think it's sort of 2 things. Like, it helps as a physio if you've had the injuries before you do the sport, because I guess you understand the demands of it a little bit better and sort of understand what it takes to come back or do those tasks or do those skills. And then also the big thing is we all do jiu-jitsu, right, as fellow practitioners. And I think that there is really like weak kind of physio out there. There's nothing like, if we go online or we go on the internet, what have you got? You've got guys doing like weird videos online to get that sort of social media attention, but there's no like dedicated kind of good quality rehab. So when I was working with footballers in the past, there's like protocols and there's kind of set ways we do it, and there's lots of money behind it. Jiu-jitsu is a huge growing sport, and there's not really anything behind it and of good quality. So it's passion for me, but it's also something that I feel there's like not a lot of quality there. So I want to try and provide my experience from other sports and kind of bring it over, really. So yeah, that's kind of how I sort of went about it and got into it, really.
Yeah, when you think about sort of like training consistently, what does that kind of mean to you?
I think I was watching a podcast with, I think it was like the More Plates, More Dates podcast with Craig Jones.
He's great.
He's class and really funny, and obviously Craig Jones we all love, and he's hilarious. And he was saying something that I really resonated with, which was, you've got to be able to train at an intensity and at a level that means you can train forever. I think that's what consistency is, because we've all had little niggles or injuries, and you just end up blocking out your training or having long layoffs. And I think it's about that, being able to have an intensity where you're rolling all the time, acquiring those skills, and then add an intensity and add a volume that's achievable. Because really for jiu-jitsu, it's exposure, right? You've got to, the reason a black belt takes 10, 12 years nowadays is because you've just got to put the mat hours in. And if you can't, okay, maybe there are systems to help you train better and more effectively, but those systems need to be, done over a long period of time. So I think it's that, finding that intensity and finding that kind of volume and, checking that ego to allow you to just go for as long or as much as you want, really.
What do you think are the most common injuries? And what are the most common injuries?
Most common, I mean, looking at the data, it's probably like knee, hip, shoulder, wrist, probably, to be honest. Neck is quite limited because I think the neck's hurt all the time. But the majority of the stuff that I see in clinic is knee injuries from jiu-jitsu.
Why is it?
I think the knee inherently is like quite a bad joint for jiu-jitsu. Like it only really flexes and extends, so sort of bends and straightens. And with the sport that you've got horrible like guard passes or submissions where you're trying to crank the knee, and you're using the knee as like a wedge, aren't you, in a support network? And it just doesn't have that resilience in the joint. You're relying on essentially it as a joint to support you. And actually with the pressure and with the way the sport is so rotational, so dynamic, it just really struggles as a joint. And then also the big thing is like now I think the game has changed where we're having a lot more submissions based on attacking the legs. Like we were going through De La Hiva recently, or the footlocks, and the heel hook game is really big now with the no-gi stuff. So I think that's been the big shift of the knee injuries. I mean, we probably all know someone who's hurt their knee. I've hurt my knee myself, and that's kind of where I have seen it in clinic as well. Like I probably get 70% of my clients in knee injuries at the moment. Yeah.
In order to prevent that, what is it? Sort of just strengthening the knee, stretching the leg. Like what is it that people can do sort of immediately in order to because I guess it's like not a lot of people are looking at preventative ways. They're sort of just dealing with the issue once it becomes an issue.
And that's the big problem, right? I mean, it's what we all want to do. We don't want to be in the gym. We want to train.
Yeah.
And it's having the two parts that I think what you're saying about how do we like strengthen the knee and reduce its risk of injury is basically if the knee is much stronger, then it's got a lot more capacity and tolerance to deal with what you're doing. It's like if you've got a massive truck versus a little G-Wiz or those little minis and you hit them together, the big truck's probably going to survive better than the mini. So if you've got a more capacity, more tolerance in the muscles and the joint, then that's better, and that's going to reduce the risk of it exposing to something bad. But secondly, rehab in itself, like the more sort of diving into the complexities of it, like, you know, plyometric training or like moving fast, moving quickly, jumping, hopping, these things increase the strength of like the tendons and the ligaments inside the joint because they react to that stress. But then also the big myth that we don't really cover it with, like, you know, normal people. We go to the gym and we just assume that's kind of rehab, but it's this training the brain and training the connection with the brain and the joints to give you that sort of quickness of reactivity.
How do you do that?
So we kind of classify it as like neuromuscular training. So quick movements, more sport specific movements, things that are sort of closer to the exposure of the sport. And that increases the brain's ability to react more quickly. So if I give you like a sort of real world example, let's say you're doing a guard pass, like you're going from top toreador to side control and you're pivoting your leg and twisting it. If you've got a really quick mind muscle connection or really quick firing muscles, if you suddenly cave your knee in or put it in an odd position, it can react much more quickly, much more vigorously. Whereas if you're a bit slow and a bit lethargic with that movement, you're probably going to not allow, the knee's going to go into that odd position and potentially injure itself. So it's that kind of reactivity and that quickness within the body to respond to those quick dynamic movements, which is the big thing in jiu-jitsu, I think.
So that's like, so let's say using that toreador to side control guard pass, and you're feeling something weird, and you're like, your brain is registering that doesn't feel right. Okay, so is it sort of almost subconscious or conscious sort of like movement in a way?
So it's a good question. These are the kind of cool questions for me.
Yeah.
So injuries of, like, let's take an ACL, right? I think we all know what that is from football or from, you know, in the media, it's a big one. An ACL injury happens quicker than your kind of physical conscious brain can really register it.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, is that because when it comes to heel hooks as well, like you can't really feel it until it's too late?
yeah. So that's another part of it is the receptors inside the joints are a little bit slow at responding, or they're not as intense as like the receptors within the skin or the receptors in other muscle groups. It's something that I'm not that well read on, but it's something that we see a little bit more in physio. So there's that. And then also following on from your question, it's also like you've got so much adrenaline and so much speed behind what you're doing that you're probably not going to feel it in time. It's a sport where it's so quick and so visceral.
Hey guys, thank you so much for making it this far into the podcast. If you have any feedback, then please let us know, as we always want to make this podcast better. So hearing from you is always a pleasure. Please subscribe to all of our platforms, get involved at Triangle Theory. If you've got any comments or if you want to share any topics that you think that me and Conrad would like to talk about, then please get involved. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
That actually, have you got the reactivity or the whereabouts to know what's happening? And this is what we'll go on to this. I think some of the questions we've got is, you know, why do we get injured and how do we avoid it? But it's that sort of, how do we speed up that brain connection to reduce the injury? And that's the kind of big thing in the rehab, which is improving that mind-muscle connection to reduce that speed. But going back to what you said, it's this balance of, can you actually avoid those positions? So let's say we do a position where it's definitely going to injure you. Even if you're really, really strong and really, really resilient, you might still get injured. So why is that? And that comes into the other thing that I want to speak about, which is this positional awareness stuff of jiu-jitsu. So I've got my like top 3 big reasons as to why I think people get injured in jiu-jitsu. So I think it's 28 or 30% of all injuries happen in sparring, so more than a third. And they always happen to the person being submitted pretty much exclusively rather than the person doing the submission. Why would that be? And I'm sort of extrapolated it in my mind. The person doing the submission is fully conscious of the move they're doing and why they're doing it. So they've got a plan in their head, like a pathway and a goal. The person being submitted is reacting to all the moves that person is doing. So the person on top doing the submission is positionally aware. They know that they're going into S mount, falling back. They know they're gonna, I don't know, you know, I'm not very good at jiu-jitsu, but they're doing all the stuff where they're going back or going forward and knowing where they're trying to be. And the person on bottom is understanding. So the person on the bottom, to reduce the injury in those positions, need to be positionally aware of what's going on. And that's why higher belts have less injuries, because they know what's happening. You know, if you're rolling with a black belt...
You mean higher belts that are in the non-dominant position?
Are less likely to be injured because they'll know that the armbar's coming. They'll know that the darter's coming. They'll know that this thing is coming.
Yeah.
And that's why we see that. Whereas at a lower level, you know, if I'm sitting on the bottom when I was just starting, I'm like, I've got no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that nothing happens. And I don't understand that the arm's going to be extended, or I don't understand it's going to come across. So it's that positional awareness, number one. Then number two, I think something we've all experienced, which is ego. So, you know, if I'm having a really bad day and I go in and I'm with a guy that I think I can get the better of and he's getting the better of me, I'm going to forcefully kind of try to push through that position or push through that submission. And, you know, we've probably all had a bit of a niggle or injury from being a bit egotistical, right? You know, someone's been pressuring us and we're like, what the hell was he doing? This is ridiculous. And that's number two. And then I think also it's choosing your sparring partner, number three, is the big one. Like, I think I have so many patients coming to me and say, oh, I was rolling with the new white belt, or I was rolling with the huge competitive blue belt. And suddenly all these responses and these things change. And it's having that care with your training partner and it's a collaboration, right? It's not a fight actually in training. And then that's following on to the other question, which is like Craig Jones saying, how do you train with consistency for longevity? Is pick the people you want to train with who care about you, who aren't going to just absolutely rip your arm off because they need to feed their ego.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing as well.
Totally agree, because there's like, you kind of pick, you can see it and you're like, do you know what, I just feel like an injury's coming from that person and I don't want to get fucking foot locked or have my arm or my elbow overextended. The other thing as well was like, when I first went to jiu-jitsu, if I was in a position where I couldn't tap, I didn't know that I could say the word tap.
Yeah.
Or I actually remember my first jiu-jitsu lesson, and actually my brother Charlie told me off. I was tapping the mat, and he was like, never tap the mat, you have to tap the person, otherwise they're not going to feel that.
Yeah.
I think it's like anyone new to the sport understanding that as well. And I think as well, like when you're in sparring, it's not, well, I think it was Handsome Jack was saying that with any other sort of isolated limb, you can be quick to tap early, but when it's like neck, you feel like you can kind of push that a little bit further than most.
Yeah.
And that's when neck injuries really happen, because all of my injuries have been based around the neck.
Okay.
Or, I mean, I've had like hyperextended elbows as well.
Yeah.
But I'm always sort of like, if I'm in a choke, I'm always willing to take that longer than, because I'm not feeling the repercussions of being passed out.
Yeah.
And then the next day I'm like, fuck, my neck is stiff. And it's just weird how there's some parts of the body that will take further than others.
Yeah.
Where do you find more injuries occur as a gi practitioner or no gi?
Gi's interesting. I think, you know, with my limited experience of jits and how I've gone about it, I think gi, I think about it as like a slow, kind of painful sport, and the no gi is like slippery and fast, right? I think there's this thing I've been seeing on social media, and you know, there's not a word for it, but like gi fingers. You know, you're talking about like gi knees or you know, or gi ears, right? You've got like gi fingers, and it's those ripping those grips and kind of having that real sort of attachment and like limpet-like grip to the gi. I think the gi slows everything down, so you're able to exert a little bit more pressure. I don't know if you guys find that, but so I think probably you're more likely to expose the joints to more torque or rotation or pressure because you're just able to latch onto this big bit of pajama that you're wearing, basically. Yeah, and I think probably with what Rupert was saying, the neck injuries, I think in the gi are probably far more worse because you've got so many lapel options, haven't you? And, you know, bow and arrows are torquing you really far that way, and you can get sort of weird underhooks or, you know, cross collars, and so that's probably more common. But then also, I think the gi gives you ability to sort of exert a little bit more force. You know, like I call it the slip factor. I don't know if that's a real thing in no gi, but you know, I think you find you're probably escaping a little bit more. You're able to muscle your way out a little bit more of submissions or move a little bit quicker because you're just a bit more oily. Whereas in the gi, you're sort of so Velcro-y and attached that they can exert a lot more force and rip things a little bit more quickly. So I think there's those two things, but you know, what we're saying at the beginning, like there's so little evidence out there because I'm, you know, trying to be evidence-based in what I'm doing and expose people to the right stuff. Like there's not many studies exposing like gi to no gi, because when you ask a jiu-jitsu guy, we do both. You know, we don't say, no one's exclusively gi or exclusively no gi. We've got to have a bit of both games. So it's an interesting thing to raise, actually, and it's something we should probably go back and look at because it'd be nice to see the big difference.
Yeah, because when I was training in London, I was mainly training gi. Like I didn't really do any no gi classes at all. But then when I moved to Manchester, I purely changed to no gi.
Yeah, okay.
So I haven't done gi in a while. But when I came to London yesterday, obviously I was training. I was thinking, I was doing like my no gi game on a gi.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It was so weird because I'm used to move a lot quicker through like positions, but just by someone holding my gi just limited me to my movements. So that was very interesting. And I think when I started training no gi, I got injured a bit more than
Really? You noticed that yourself?
gi. Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like it's because I never done gym at all in the past, and I started to feel like my body's falling apart.
Yeah.
So now, like the last 2 months, I've been going gym, and I feel
feel better for it?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you feel your jits is getting better as well from it?
Yeah. Like people don't throw me around as much as they used to.
Because you're stronger, right?
Yeah, but then at the same time, with gi, you can't really throw around people that much because
you're attached.
I can attach myself to it. So it was it's an interesting shift.
What movements are you doing in the gym, just out of interest?
No, just movements as in like moving from position to position. Like say if I'm going to
but like strength training in the gym.
Oh, in the gym, sorry. Gym. I just do like the usual like bench press, I do squats. I did a bit of a deadlift, but I didn't really feel good. I didn't really feel good on my back, so
fair enough.
I just stopped doing it. Just usual stuff like just getting a bit stronger, and that's it.
I mean, he's hit the nail on the head, really. Like that's it, because it's, we do all this fancy shit in physio and in our strength and conditioning programs for my clients, and basically the best rehab program or strength program is the one that you just get on with and do. Like, we talk about like the stacking days thing, or, you've got these guys on social media saying, oh, jiu-jitsu, you've got to like think about it and do all of this. And I think our mentality at the club is like, if you just turn up and train, it will click and you will learn. It's that consistency. And, to get benefits from strength training is like 3 months of grafting. Like with jits, it's months of doing it. So it's just turning up and doing it. And then we can optimize once you've got that consistency. That's how I look at it.
I was just about to say that, because when you injured your knee and you were out for 4 months, you were like really disciplined and dedicated to the process of physio, because you knew that if I commit to this, I'll be back on the mat sooner.
Yeah,
but so many people don't commit to that, or they'll just come back and be like, oh, my leg hurts again, or my knee hurts again. So right, how many times have you been doing the exercise we've been telling you to? I don't know, once a month, or when I come in here.
Well, also when Brian injured, our friend Brian,
of course,
he had a shoulder.
He fractured his
elbow,
humerus, arm bone. Like it was horrible rotational fracture.
Yeah, so he supposed to be out for like how long? Like 8 months.
So fracture's interesting. So fracture is probably a non-complex fracture of a joint that is or bone that is able to stabilize is probably an easier injury to recover from, because bones luckily actually heal back a lot stronger than they were originally, and as long as they're fixated well, the recovery is quite good. What he's finding, I think, and he probably won't mind us talking about this, is that the limitations of the muscles and the joint now is the issue. So the bone is healed, and we know that's healed from the follow-ups and the checkups that we did, but it's actually from the scar where it's cut through the muscle and where the plate is intact, that's affecting the range of motion and the strength. So he's now got to be more sort of conscientious with his training, because he's got to realize that that's going to be a deficit that he's going to have, and that strength training will help those muscles recover better.
But he also recovered in it quite.
Did the bone go through the muscle?
I don't remember it being an open fracture. I think it was a like inside from the photos and videos that I saw, having seen him a few times as a patient. That's obviously a lot more complex. Like that's a big emergency, but like was a big injury. And I think this is the other part of it, where patients who have got the right mindset will recover from whatever it is. Like
he recovered quite quick.
Like, but he was so dedicated. He was like he's a perfect patient because he just did everything I wanted him to do, and he was just very believed in the process, and he was just tenacious in commitment, and that's it. That is just like, how do you get your black belt? How do you become good at the sport? It is literally just turning up more than the next guy every day and doing the things you don't want to do when you don't want to do it.
What do you think it is about, or what practices do coaches miss when it comes to part of injury prevention?
I think it's hard because the culture in jiu-jitsu is like that kind of grind culture, that kind of like we're tough. This is the like real martial art, the real sport.
So you're stretching what a pussy kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of gyms that I won't name do funny warm-ups that I see on social media, and that's great. But, has the coach got the level of knowledge of like injury prevention and strength training? They've got an amazing knowledge of the sport, but it's two different facets. And I think that it's hard to, every injury is different. And if you've been in jiu-jitsu for any length of time, you will have had injuries. I think it's at least 2.7 is the figure. You will have had at least 2.7 injuries.
What, throughout your whole jiu-jitsu practice?
Yeah, if we take an average of like all practitioners, it's probably roughly 3 injuries, I reckon, through their whole career.
So like up until you get your black belt.
So the study that was proving that was displaying that data was, they took a survey of, I think it was 1,000 practitioners. They didn't ask for their belt rank, but they asked for their level of like exposure or how much training they'd done, and it was between like 1.5 years and like 12.4 years, right? That was like, I think, the average roughly. And basically what they were looking at was how many injuries each one had. And you've got a guy who's been training for 1 year, he's got 0, and you've got the guy who's been training for 10 years, he might have 5 injuries. Then they said, right, we're going to average that out, and across the deviation, I think, was about 3 or 2.5, or we're taking a bit more averages here. And then they looked at like what was the average duration of time out, and it was very variant depending on injuries. But when we talk about coaches, they like you to have had a few injuries. And the problem with injuries, and I'm finding this more and more throughout my physio career, is that they're all different. You can't just blanketly say like, you've probably had the scary brown belt come up to you in the gym and say, oh, have you hurt your neck? Yeah, I've heard it. Oh, I did this stretch and it worked. And that's great, and I love that, and I think that's all about the community, but it worked for him. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So it's understanding your body and having that analysis and that kind of investigation of how you move and how you train and who you are to determine how your injury is going to progress, as opposed to like, we've all seen, I bang social media quite a lot in my profession, but, do this exercise and it's going to cure your back pain. It may well do, 100%. I've had patients who I've not helped and they've followed some guy on social media and it's been fantastic. But it's about taking that personalised approach. And I think that's what would be difficult as a coach. I think to look at each one of your students, analyse and say, oh, you're really flexible, so maybe you need to be stronger. Or you're really stiff, maybe you need to be more stretchy. And it must be just hard for them to know, because they're tracking so many different things, aren't they, while they're teaching.
Can I ask a question? Because I see it all over social media and it always gets like loads of likes and comments and stuff. It's like when you see this like back cracking stuff,
oh, mate,
and they're literally just putting a towel around people's necks and just like ripping it. First of all, I don't know if I could ever do that. And you like see these people, they've got like a funny limp, and then they like click their spine and they're like, and then they're like start walking again, and it's just like, and then all these people are like, I need that, I've had like 25 years of pain.
You see
and
the
they
guy
kind of just think like one click is going to sort them.
the guy's in a wheelchair and then suddenly he starts walking.
Yeah.
He's divorced, then suddenly he's married. What's going on? It's like, his wife was 40, now she's 30. It's like, it's so, it's, the thing is that, am I going to post the submission where I look like an idiot? No, I'm going to post the one where I'm looking like an ADCC trials medalist. I'm not going to.
Not many of those.
Let's not talk about the medals here. Whereas, I'm not going to, as a practitioner, post my failures. I'm going to post my successes. And, let's take a snapshot of my clinic. Like, I'm seeing 8 patients a day, 7 hours a week, 48 weeks a year. That's a lot of patients, right? How many videos are these guys posting? 1 a week, 2 a week? That's, maybe 5% of their patients. So it's hard, and, the cracking stuff and all of this is huge, and it's a huge social media grab, and that's great. And I think that's really good for certain people. But are they taking that more blindsided approach of like they're doing the same crack on everyone? And that's chiropractic, which is a slightly different world to me, and it's not something I know about particularly. And I've worked with chiropractors and osteopaths who are absolutely amazing. It's not something I'm very well read on, and I understand, and I know it does help some people. But then I've also, as a physio, seen the damage it's done. I've had people come to me and they've had a crack from a practitioner and it's made them worse. And then they've come to me and we've had to, unpick that. So again, and then I've equally had patients that I haven't helped and that I've then sent to a chiropractor and he's done amazing work. So it's again taking that personalised approach and knowing when it's not working and understanding that. So it's It's why it's so hard. You know, we it's hard to know what's going to help someone at the start.
And like when you're feeling the body and you're trying to feel like what's working for you, what's not working for you, is it sort of just feeling it and sort of having like a stretching, or
Do you
is
mean
it
from
sort of-
the person who's like the practitioner, or like me as a physio?
well, let's go from the practitioner to start with. Let's say you've given me some, let's say like exercises to follow,
Yeah.
and some are working for me. Some is there a way that you would recommend for someone to be like, okay, we'll see how that feels and then go from there? Is it because obviously if you're exercising a joint and it's painful, there has to be some pain involved.
Yeah.
In a way.
No pain, no gain, right? To a certain extent. I think that the common myth that happens in physio, and this is where having worked with athletes, it's very useful, is we take an approach based on set criteria, not just like you turn up and you say, like, I'm feeling better. Because you might be feeling better one day, like you might wake up with a headache, you know, you're not feeling good. And I would say, don't mistake feeling good for feeling better. How do we track better? What is better in my profession? And it's tracking metrics. So let's take a patient, comes in, jiu-jitsu patient, got knee pain, had knee pain for a year. What's wrong? I fiddle around with his knee, I look at it, I assess it, and then I do some objective testing. So I go, what's the strength of your knee objectively, and how many kilos of force can it produce? How do you jump? How do you land? How do you hop? What's your reaction force on the ground? These are complex measures that are boring for you guys. I nerd out on all this stuff, right, when I get home. And then what we do is we look at, right, so typically if you've got a painful knee, it's probably weaker, probably got certain factors that are weaker. So when we give you a program to do, we then go, oh, right, so you've done 6 weeks and it's now 8% stronger than it was. That's what better is. We know that that's better. What then becomes interesting, and I think what you're talking about, is, are they in less pain? And we don't know, because, or we know because they tell us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that betterness will equal less pain. And this is where I think we go into, like, what is pain? Why do some people have way more pain than others? Why do some people have less pain? And this is the really personal approach to kind of rehab and this side of medicine, which is pain is so personal, a sort of thing for you, and it's your journey through your own life, that, you know, we take 100 people with the same physical symptoms, or like on an MRI or assessment symptoms, they may have wildly different sort of pain levels or pain measures, and that's that kind of more personal side of it as well. But I'm digressing. Looking at how you're feeling better, it's those objective tracking measures. Like, how do you know jiu-jitsu is working? You're hitting that position more. If you were to tally it up, you're getting that position more. Your percentage of that submission is higher. That's, you know, we're looking at numbers that we can track and look at progress. Like investing your money.
Yeah.
If you gave me all your money and I said,
Yeah.
you're making money, Bernie Madoff, great example, faking bank statements, right, for his clients. Yeah, you're making loads of money. It's great. Cool. Thanks, Bart. No, where's the number that tells me I'm making more money? That's how I look at it. Money in the bank, tracking the money in the bank.
Well, how would you recommend then warming up before the class? And I guess touching on warming up and cooling down as well.
So warm up, my favourite quote, which we don't have to agree on, but is, how would you cook a steak? You don't stretch it, you heat it up, right? That's what we say in sport. It's about prepping the body first. So what is actually a warm-up? Well, let's define a warm-up. It is making the cells in the body ready and of a higher turnover or energy to get ready for the sport. So it's getting the muscles hot, getting them pliable. So if you ever stuck something on the wall with blue tack and you come back and the room's cold, the blue tack's kind of, this is a very vague analogy, but it's like, it's easy to rip, it's not as malleable. You warm it up on the radiator, heat it up in your hands, soft and pliable. Tendons, muscles, ligaments that have more of heat have more properties to adapt and are more flexible. So that's what the warm-up's meant to be. It's meant to be raise your pulse, increase your body heat, and get everything kind of warm and the nervous system ready to act on that sport. You know, these kind of, you know, overly specific warm-ups, when we look at the gym, for example, let's take a warm-up for a gym. I'm a big fan of raising the pulse, getting them hot, maybe a little bit of soft tissue like with the foam roller, just to desensitize and get something ready. We practice the move we're going to do quickly, and then we slowly build the weight up. You know, we don't need to do 45 minutes of hip mobility or little accessory exercises necessarily for uninjured people. This is for injured people, it's different because we have to take a more personalised approach. But yeah, it's about just getting the body ready and getting it prepared for the sport and hot and warm. And, you know, that's a typical kind of warm-up. And then you were saying cool down, weren't you, as well? Cool down's hard. I think like the whole like ice bath, sauna kind of thing, These can be really, really good.
What, straight after workout?
So yeah, they are good, and I think that this is where I look at the feeling good versus being good analogy. And it's like, if an ice bath or a sauna makes you feel better after training, then arguably it has an effect. There was a recent study that I can't quote, I haven't got the literature on me, which is that ice baths, if you're gymming really heavy and you immediately do a cold plunge, it actually is likely to reduce that effect of hypertrophy or muscle strength, because
Hey guys, your feedback is very important. And no, this is not an advertisement. Actually, what I'm asking from you is to leave a comment below what you liked and, most importantly, what you disliked about this episode, because we can improve on the next episodes and we can make a better content for you to listen. Give us also a topics you'd like to us talking about, and we can prepare, do your research and talk about it on the next episodes.
Because
thank you.
When you build muscle, it's inflammation, you're damaging the muscle tissue. And if you then go into something that reduces that inflammatory response, then you're not growing the muscle. So we're thinking now that, like, what is the best recovery for my clients, my patients? Nutrition, sleep, hydration. That's it. Matt Fraser, world's fittest man, right, CrossFit world champ, said sleep is the cheat code for performance. Test increases, fat-free mass increases, all of it with good sleep. Study that we used, and I'm quoting the studies, guys, so I'm losing you a little bit.
It's fine, man. I like it.
Is the one that we use in FIFA a lot when I was working was under 7 hours a night, 50% increase in injuries from marathon runners. That was the big stat.
So
if you sleep less than 7 hours a night, average it over the course of like a 2-month training cycle, we saw 50% roughly increase in injuries.
Oh, wow.
Because all of your muscle body healing turnover happens at night. Bony healing, muscle healing, brain healing. So
you recommend 8 hours at least minimum?
Yeah, go.
Because I wanted to ask as well, because what I've noticed recently, so I'm trying to get at least 8 hours of sleep.
It's tough though, right? It's not easy.
It's not easy. So what I was doing, I was going to sleep at 11 o'clock at night and waking up at 7 in the morning.
Yeah, fine.
But what I've changed now, I started going to sleep at 10 and waking up at 6.
Fine.
And I've noticed that I feel a lot better and well rested going to sleep earlier at night rather than later. Yeah. Do you think that little gap between 10 and 11 or 12 or even later 1 and 2 a.m., even though you're still getting those 8 hours of sleep, has an effect on the quality of your sleep if you go earlier?
I think I'm not a sleep expert by any means. I've got, basic understanding of the kind of physiology. I think it's, when does your body naturally want to sleep, right? And I think the modern world is really bad at allowing us that. Like, I'm up at 6 a.m. for work. I'm not a 6 a.m. riser. When I go to bed at 12 and wake up at 9, that is my like fantastic level. I've got some guys who go to bed at 9, wake up at 5, they love it. So it's really finding where you feel, comfortable. I mean, naturally for mammals, for sleep, it's like sunrise, sunset, circadian rhythm, all of that. And it's something that I don't know too much about. But I think going to that like personalized approach to like rehab, it's when do you feel tired, when do you like to sleep? And have you got, we call it sleep hygiene in my world. It's like, if you've got good sleep hygiene, like, are you eating, sort of within the time frame of going to bed, so like not an hour before, is it 2-3 hours before to allow that digestion? Are you reducing like light exposure? Are you reducing like overall stimulus to your brain? Like if you're watching a really like intense action movie, is that going to give you a little bit of like arousal, right? We call it arousal in sport. So it's understanding that, and a lot of us, me included, have very poor sleep hygiene. Like I'm brain rotting on my phone at night and having a little shake after jits before I go to bed, and like, but this is about being realistic in like the world around us. If I say to a patient that comes in and they're sleeping 5 hours a night and I go, you've got to sleep 8, and they go, it's not possible. We've got to work around that and try and find ways to help that. And do they need to nap in the day? Have they got poor sleep hygiene? Do they need to improve that? So I think answering your question, it's not necessarily about like there's a perfect time to sleep. Like I'm not going to recommend going to bed at 4 a.m. and waking up at 12 a.m. the next morning, p.m. even. But it's about finding the time that you feel the most well rested and experimenting with that. And that's where the kind of Whoop sleep tracker kind of stuff comes in. It's finding those times when you get those best scores and working on that and finding it out. But then also about being realistic. Like you're not going to sleep well every night, but trying to average it out over the course of your training history and your training life, basically.
It's really difficult because
it's just so
I really struggle with
sleep.
So hard. I don't. if I get a good night's sleep, I can get up really easily in the morning. And like, I've been getting up really early recently because I've been going to the gym in the morning.
Yeah, good.
It's just going to bed I find really hard. It's
Yeah.
the discipline of going to bed.
Yeah.
I'll be like midnight or like sometimes even past that at times.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
my brain is just like the habit of
Yeah, you're like super, you know, it's revving like an engine. It's, you know, you've got a lot on your mind, and yet I think I find it sort of the modern world a little bit. I remember when I had a period of like kind of extended holiday before I changed roles recently, and I remember like not having the stress of work and training twice a day, jits, gym, eating when I wanted, having loads of control over my routine. It's the best sleep I've had in years. And, you know, I think that work and jobs and other stresses and like, you know, classes aren't always at the time you want, or your job might finish a bit later. So it's being realistic, and, you know, professional athletes control every facet of their life, whereas as mere mortals, and I'm definitely not an athlete if you look at me on the camera, it's, you know, Johnny, that's later. That's behind the scenes.
Take it up.
That's the extended cut. It's trying to just find your routine and feel well rested, and that's really hard, and it's, you know, it's not easy, and it's something that we have to broach, and it's tough.
going to like exercises for joint strength and mobility. What would be your top exercises?
The money question, isn't it?
Mm.
Top 3 exercises. Top 3 exercises are the ones you're going to do. That's always what I say to my clients. I think if we relate to jiu-jitsu and like bang for your buck, like what's going to give you like the best resilience and the best kind of like overall, heavy compounds, to be honest. Multi-joint exercises that utilize more than 2 muscle groups, more than 2 joints. So like squats, bent over rows, RDLs, pull-ups, if you're looking at upper body. If I was to look at like a program for a client, I'd probably do squats, like Zercher deadlifts, where you've got them in the arms, you're doing like a squat pattern, and then some kind of row or some kind of pull-up. I think that you can really, truly get away with just squatting and just benching for some people if you can do that. But compounds give you the most bang for your buck. And if you wanted to spend 40 minutes in the gym, I'd probably just do heavy compounds of ones that you want to do. You know, not everyone wants to squat, but, you know, you said you don't like deadlifting, and that's a personal preference. And, you know, I like deadlifting. You might, Rupert, I don't know. And it's about exercise you want to do, but I'd probably go, you know, multi-joint compound exercises that are heavy, that stimulate a lot more muscle groups, because it's just going to give you more bang for your buck. And that relates to sport. Jiu-Jitsu is a global sport. You want to have all the muscles being strong, not just like, you know, on the pec deck ripping pec flies. You know, you'll look great, but might not help you for, you know, whatever you want to do for jits.
Are you looking at people's form a lot of the time when people are coming into your clinic? And do you feel like people's form in general, people should be looking at more?
I think exercising badly, you know, objectively badly, is obviously not helpful. You know, and form is a transient thing. Like, there's a lot of myth in social media, and I get a lot of hate for this. Not hate, but, you know, get a lot of friction from people, which is form is different for everyone. Like, I've got really long legs and a really short body, so my squat is going to look different to Conrad, who's built really well for a weightlifter, right? You've got nice, like, even lever lengths, you're a good height. Just, you know, compliments coming out now.
Thank you.
But it's form is different for everyone, so there's no perfect form. I would say in stuff that I've done in the qualifications that I've studied for, it's like there's parameters that we set, like hips below knees for a squat, for example, is what I want. And you don't want the back arching forward or back too much for the squat pattern you're doing. But if we took all of us and were to do heavy squats related to our body weight, I guarantee we'd all be different. So if I put us all in the same box, it might make your back a bit stiff, it might make my arms stiff, your hips might start to hurt. So it's adapting. And it's, you know, we're all sitting differently in these chairs, right? I'm sitting badly. Conrad's sitting well, obviously. You're sitting a bit like me. Now you've changed, obviously.
I'm going to change now as well.
We're changing now.
You know what? Because I was doing like a bit of yoga in the park, or just like a little stretch routine.
Yeah.
And
No comment on that one.
My form with it, like, because like you're saying, there's no real right way, and there's so many different variations. I would say probably every single patient has a different variation in some way.
We're all different. We don't all look the same, you know.
But I think the way in which I was like having my shoulders out straight, you could see that there was like tightness in like parts of the shoulder, or I don't know, because I'm a bit more sort of muscular on the back than say like. So like just the way in which my sort of arms are out, and it just there's so many differences. And I imagine every single day when you see a patient, it's
It's personalise it. And it's same as jits. Like, you know, if we're demoing in the class, right, you get one of the girls, bendy girls, or one of the bendy boys to do a Kimura or an Americana. Arms going all the way. Me, you, and Charlie.
Oh, mate.
I tap when it's there.
Yeah.
It doesn't even get flat to the ground. So it's understanding that. And, you know, I'm not going to try to change your body to make it perfect. So the big thing we use, and I don't know if this is, you know, people are aware of it, but Usain Bolt, arguably greatest sprinter, you know, who's ever lived at this point, or, you know, greatest of the generation that I've been alive in, he's got a big scoliosis, curvature of the spine. So it's deviated to one side. I don't know the exact figure or how much, but he's got a massive asymmetry, means he's probably got a leg longer than the other, and he's probably got an imbalance somewhere. If we were to change that imbalance, would he be less efficient or would he be more efficient? We don't know. He's running 9.58, I think his world record was. Yeah. So hugely fast. If we were to change that asymmetry, would it make him worse or better? And then the other one is a football colleague of mine. They had a footballer for like West Ham or something in the 80s, and he had like no left foot, and it was terrible. And he was just right-footed and whole right side dominant and really weak on the left side. And they spent years building his left side. Not years. They spent an off-season building his left side to get him more balance. And he comes back and he's like not playing as well, because his body naturally like favours that asymmetry.
Adjusted, yeah.
So it's this kind of myth in the world that like symmetry is meant to be this, like we aim for this symmetry. And I think it comes from the social media kind of bodybuilding aesthetic, which is if you're standing on stage and you're being judged for how good your body looks, symmetry is important. But have you ever done a symmetrical thing in jiu-jitsu?
There's definitely this like stick with working out where it's like, are you working out for yourself or are you working out for others in order to look good? And I think that takes away the functionality of what exercising is all about.
Exactly.
And that's about making you feel good, not necessarily look good.
Yeah.
Because like you were saying, you could be ripping the pec deck, and you could have fucking like great pecs and fucking solid triceps, and you could look great, but actually like could be really stiff. That could be like, I don't know, that might not feel good. You might not have maneuverability.
It's training for the goal. Truly, like if your goal is to like pick up other dudes, then like go and do abs, or girls, fellas and ladies. You know, if that's
jiu-jitsu.
If that, yeah, I mean exactly. Why am I here? If that's the goal, then you know aesthetics is important. So you know, sod all the other stuff. Just aesthetically train all the muscles that really matter. But if your goal is to do jiu-jitsu, like functionality and relationship to the sport is more important. And I guarantee you the training for like an elite kind of sprinter or elite weightlifter, for example, looks very different to the training of like an elite heptathlete or an elite long distance runner. So we call it the SAID principle, SAID, so specific adaptation for impose of demand. So, you know, the traits that you want for your sport have to be, you know, trained more specifically. And then there's a little bit of myth to that we probably see on social media, like these S&C coaches, and I can put myself in that bracket as well, doing like trampolining shit with like a football, and you're like, that looks really cool and it looks really functional, which is the buzzword, but does that actually give you the sort of changes in the body that you want? What does a football need to do? Be fast, change direction well, and you know, backtrack and move well. Does that necessarily mean they're moving well? No. Doing like aggressive plyometrics in different directions, lifting heavy weights to make them stronger, those are more specific for those demands. So it's looking at that as well, and that's the hard bit.
Just out of interest, the thing that I thought about, do you have any knowledge about if fasting helps for like strengthen your joints and bones and recovery really?
It's a tough question. I'm not a nutritionist by any means. I've got an ability to talk about the different macronutrients you would eat and how much of what and when to fuel yourself. I think that there are lots of fad diets and there are lots of fad sort of things to do. You know, we're getting more information that like fueling is really important. You know, it's like putting crap fuel in a car. It's not going to run as well no matter how good the engine is. I think that fasting probably has some benefits for people, and I think probably like anecdotally like mental acuity and sort of feeling better. But if you are reducing your caloric intake or your intake of your macronutrients, that's going to sort of actually, you know, affect performance. So there are, you know, certain overtraining syndromes that can occur from eating too little to try and make weight, for example. So boxers or jockeys is a big one, or endurance runners, or for aesthetic reasons. Your body needs building blocks to grow and to change from those training stimulus that you're having. So it's hard. And I think that it's also that, coming back to it, is that feeling good versus being good. Like, you know, you'd want an optimum level of body fat. You'd want, you know, we talk about 2 grams of protein per kilo per day. That's kind of the buzzword now, the figure. You know, we're looking at a certain dosage of carbohydrates. If you take that away, are you fueling the body adequately? It might give your brain a change, or it might give you a different stimulus, but it's not giving you the base units that your body needs to adapt. And we always say about recovery, your body only adapts from the training it recovers from, which is that I use that with my patients a lot. So you're not going to get the changes if you're not providing the stimulus, number one, and then the fuel in to get that body ready. So from my experience, I don't sort of condone that kind of stuff, to be honest with you. And I also, you know, to make it really sort of certain, I don't have the knowledge to say whether it's good or bad, and I don't know enough about it. But my philosophy is about, you know, the correct nutrients in to get the changes and have the building blocks that you need for our training outcome, basically.
Yeah.
When balancing intensity in your workout with and training, how would one sort of avoid burnout or sort of overuse?
So like overtraining is what you're talking about, I think is hard, because as an elite athlete, let's say, that's much more tracked. You know, we track your chronic load, we track how much you're doing per session, how much you're doing in the course of a season. To sort of understand how you're are you asking for like, how would you know you're overtraining?
Yeah, because there are some days where I'm like, fuck, I really don't feel like training, I'm a bit tired, and then like in the back of my mind I'm like, it's consistency, it's you got to train on the days where you don't feel like it, because that's when you get good.
And this is that culture, isn't it? And this is why I think like a lot of us fall down. And like I remember Martin, our coach, we've all shared, was like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And like when I came back from my knee, he was like, you sure? And I was like, yeah, took an extra month, I'm sure. I remember this is being selfish now, but I remember I texted Martin and I was like, I'm coming back on April like 2nd or something. And then he texted me, he was like, are you sure? And I went, no. And I didn't come back for another month. I didn't come back till May. And I was like, fuck, that's really hard. That's the ego side of it for the overtraining area. That's a side note. And I thought it was quite helpful for me to kind of quash that
voice in the back of your mind.
Because there is that fine line between being like actually feeling that like you on the verge of burnout and on the risk of injury, and then as Rupert said, there's this always in the back of your head that like says like, oh, you've been a pussy now, like come on and get up. And how do you know that like, yeah, like how do you physically feel that you are burnt out? So
there's different types of what we call overreaching or overtraining, and they all come under bracket of what we call overtraining syndrome. And really, if you were looking at like you're overreaching or you're doing too much, you would have some like changes in your mood, changes in your kind of balance of your hormones and your recovery. So you'd feel like you might feel lower, you might feel more stressed because your body's not able to balance the stresses of external and internal. You're probably looking at more fatigue, changes in appetite, changes in kind of your sensory and physical symptoms like bowels, muscles, soreness, all of these kind of things. And then if you're going deeper into that, then you're looking at changes in like your like sexual function. And this is when overtraining becomes a really severe problem. And we call it energy deficiency syndrome, when it's not something I'm that well read on, but we have to screen for it in certain athletes where you're getting change in like your hormone balance, your sex drive, your ability to kind of, you know, for women, it would be one thing, for men, it's another thing. We obviously know that. And it's those things. So it's sort of looking out for those markers in your body and understanding that maybe like you're overly fatigued or you're not sleeping well, your sleep's changed, appetite's worse, appetite's better, you're getting frustrated more easily, you're not in that kind of flow state, you maybe got a little bit more anxiety. And then also like listening to your body and being like, you know, is my calf really sore? Like, have I got a swollen knee? Is my neck really stiff? Do I need to like listen to some of those physical signs before the more mental signs come in? And yeah, it's really hard to know. You know, I have athletes that will come to me and, you know, I probably have some sense that they're overtraining, but, you know, they mask it really well. They're physically in great shape. So my ability to be like, you're really sore, really weak is hard because they just go, I feel great. But they look emotionally a bit more drained, or they look a bit more fatigued or tired, and, you know, they're having arguments with their girlfriend, and it's these kind of things to look out for. And I think, I remember, like, personally as an experience for me, when I know that I think I'm doing a bit too much jiu-jitsu or gym, I've had a really great session, I feel like I was really dialed in, I was flowing, I felt really good, or even when I'm training badly but in a good recovery place, I reflect on it and be like, that was really positive. I had a good session, but I'm really tired. But when I know that I'm probably overtraining or doing too much, I feel internally like frustrated, recovery's bad, I've got soreness, I've got niggles, and it's kind of understanding that as well. But this again is a personal approach really. But it's so hard to judge it a lot of the time as well.
And how would you treat the recovery?
So to improve, like let's say you're overreaching, you're overtraining, it's like modify training stimulus, change dietary things, improve sleep really. So those pillars that we discussed previously. So, it may require 2 or 3 days of rest for more minor cases of that overreaching, where you might need 2 or 3 days to reset your nervous system, just have some hormone recovery and just get that, what we call homeostasis, that like settled of everything, of those response in the body. Some levels of overtraining are months to years. You can have endurance athletes that have, it's particularly apparent in females where they've lost certain hormonal functions like menstruation and things like that, and that can take years to come back because their hormone balance has been so altered by so much training. And that's not something that I've experienced too much in jiu-jitsu, because I think there's quite a healthy response to that, and it's quite a more amateur sport. It's not so professional. There's not so many medals or so much money behind it. But it's getting back to those principles of like, let's say you're going 6 days a week, 3 hours a day of jits, you'd go down to 3 days a week, 2 hours a day, and then slowly build up and get those things to feel slightly better and improve that. And it's changing your stimulus and changing your load really is the two things, to be honest.
Do you have any ideas how would you improve the grip strength?
Grip strength. So it's a hard...
And again, sorry though, just to mention,
right.
how would that different from a gi and a no gi player?
It's a good question, actually. I think functionally wise, like you either got strong grip or you're not. Like you're both quite a lot bigger than me. I'm sure that if you grip my trouser on my neck, it's probably better than if I grip yours because you're just stronger than me. I think that it'd be hard to like... You don't want to become overly specific to like adapting the grip strengthening program to like a no-gi or a gi situation, because we see these videos on the internet, right? And I think I posted one a while ago, which is like a guy doing like gi pull-ups, and that's like great, that strengthens his hands for gis. But you could be doing deadlifts with fat grips, or you could be doing like plate pinches or heavy farmers carries. You're probably going to get much stronger doing those kind of really heavy grip exercises versus doing gi pull-ups and saying that, your strength is increasing because you're using a gi. The best way to get strong is progressive overload. That's it. Make it harder over time. Crawl, walk, run. So week 1, I've done 10 kilo bicep curl. Week 12, I've done 30 kilo bicep curl. That's how you get stronger. Your body adapts to a stimulus over time. So the way I look at grip strength is the same thing. Make sure you're actively training the grip, so getting the grip in the hand in stretched positions and contracted positions, changing the way that it works. So the wrist doesn't just do this, it does this, it does this, it does that, it does that, these different movements. So it's training all those movements progressively over time with different approaches of stimulus. So bicep curls to build grip strength in this plane of motion, doing like fat rowing to build position, and rowing with fat grips or rowing with heavy grips to do it in this position, weighted pull-ups to improve the strength there and have more load through the grip strength. So I think to sort of sort of condense it down, it's we can use the grip aids like fat grips or different modalities like using the rice trick. We've seen like Bruce Lee doing through the rice, and because that's a fixed resistance. But then also the argument I make is, right, you've got an NFL linebacker who deadlifts 300 pounds, and you've got Bart who deadlifts 100 pounds, who's got stronger grips. Naturally, with no straps, who's got stronger grips?
NFL.
There you go. So tends to be that if you've got stronger compound lifts or stronger lifts in general, you've got stronger grip strength. So is it also just getting stronger as well? Because your hands are doing all the movements. So there's also that aspect as well.
So it'd be that sort of training the whole forearm then as well, or just the whole arm within itself?
Yeah, I'd probably go more holistic actually. It's training. I mean, let's look at my grip strength approach. I'm trying to balance the argument here of like, how do I do it? I train wrist flexion, so bending the wrist, heavy weights. I train wrist extension. I train deviation in both sides of the wrist as well. And then I train with fat grips. So I train wide grips because you're stretching the muscle, so it's more stimulated when it's stretched. And then I'm training all the various movements that the forearm can act on the wrist, basically. And then I'm progressing those loads through time What I'm not doing is gi pull-ups,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, because that's just like that's just because you're saying that because it's using a gi. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't.
It's just like this whole like functional training bullshit, which
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
you know, it's like if you see those guys on the internet like doing weighted guard passes, like with a vest on or like with the funny bands, and that's great, and that probably does give you some skill acquisition. But what I say to those guys is, and Charles Allen Price, who's a very famous like jiu-jitsu strength coach, is big on this. The gym is for building physical qualities that matter. So, you know, strength through range of motion, ability to hop, ability to jump, ability to express force, and the skill is done in the jiu-jitsu gym. The two aren't mutually exclusive. You can't necessarily add weight to a skill and that skill becomes better,
yeah,
because skills require speed and decision making, and you can build speed in the gym, but you would want to build physical qualities in a gym where you've got dedicated machines to do that, and then you build the skills in the gym environment. And that's really where the training, I think, for a lot of people goes wrong, is they do like really specific training, like, oh, I'm really bad at armbar defense, so I'm going to do like some weird ass pec fly or dumbbell curl to build that. And I'm like, your armbar defense is probably because you're not as skillful as you think, or you're getting caught in that position a lot. And yeah, the strength will help you overall, but it's those two things building in. So it's like, are you strong in your push? Are you strong in your frames? Are you strong bridging? It's all combined. It's not just my biceps weak so they can rip it. And it's looking like that, basically.
What's one small habit every grappler could sort of take on? If there was like a blanket habit you could sort of...
So like if I like,
If you could just
I'm
recommend
a
one thing.
dictator in a jiu-jitsu country,
Yeah.
and I say, what have you got to do?
Yeah.
Strength train.
Strength training.
Yeah.
That's one habit you would just say.
Blanket policy. Yeah. I
So
think.
someone that just does jiu-jitsu that's not strength training, it's just not enough.
It is enough, but I think that the biggest change in performance would come from strength training. Like, yes, you train more, you acquire more skill, but like, you know, we've all come across a guy who's really strong, and we get a new white belt who's probably played like professional level rugby, or he's like wrestled a lot. Are they really difficult to spar with or train with? Yeah, because they're bloody strong. Strength is a huge attribute in these sports. That's number one. So strength is just really good. Like, if you're really strong, it's way harder. And number two, strength and sort of resilience and capacity is built in the gym. If you want to have longevity doing jiu-jitsu, training in the gym will give your body strength and capacity and tolerance over time. Whereas if you train, you're likely just accumulating small injuries that aren't getting other stimulus to change over time. So yeah, would be strength training. And then, let's play devil's advocate, if no one would strength train, probably recovery, sleep, nutrition, hydration. That would probably be it. Yeah, my small behaviours.
Hydration. What would you sort of include in that hydration? Because obviously, if you're just drinking water, it's not enough. You're looking at sort of salt, potassium, sodium intake. Like, are you recommending people to sort of take a salt sachet, put it in their water bottle after training to get that back in?
So it's again, yeah, I'm careful how I speak about this
I
because
know,
I'm not a nutritionist, and you know,
Sure.
there's all the like liabilities there that come with it. I think that, you know, just getting adequate hydration for what you've lost. I think that my knowledge of this is that, you know, water sometimes isn't enough, and that you do need, because you lose electrolytes with sweat. So I think, like, you know, an electrolyte solution is not going to make you Cristiano Ronaldo. You know, you're not going to suddenly become this absolute animal because you put a packet of potassium and in a bottle. You know, it's just not, you know, it's like the quote I use is John Danaher, Gary Tonin was on an interview, and they were like, and this is a bit cynical and going against what I've kind of said previously, but if you know, they're talking about how the nutrition in jiu-jitsu is really bad, and I think Gary Tonin goes, I've been eating Five Guys my whole life, and if the difference between me winning a medal and not is the fact that I eat Five Guys, I'm obviously not good enough at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's probably not going to turn you into an absolute, you know, Gordon Ryan.
Sure.
But I think it does have its place, and I think that, you know, we could probably hydrate better, and it's, you know, there's a lot of research and information out there to kind of check out. But, you know, personally myself, I use an electrolyte solution, you know, following the gym, and I try to, you know, get back the fluid that I've lost from the training session, sort of weigh in before and after. But I think that not hydrating or not focusing on some level of hydration is going to negatively impact your performance. and that would
Just
be
anyway.
just anyway.
Yeah.
Hydration's a huge thing. You know, we're like 70-80% water, so it's a huge thing to think about. And I think that it's one of those pillars of like, you know, dehydration is going to negatively impact you, so you should keep it there to just, you know, have more resilience and train better.
Yeah. It's one thing I really fucking lack on is like hydrating enough. Like really 4 liters a day, 3.5 liters a day. Like probably that on a exercise day or gym day.
Yeah.
But do I get that in? Fuck no.
It's consistency, right?
Yeah.
It's a consistency of hydration, and you know, I think that, you know, everyone needs different levels of hydration based on size, muscle mass, and all of this kind of stuff. And I think that it's hard to say, but I think that it's, you know, it's not something that we talk about, right? You know, I'm not like, you know, oh, you need to hydrate more. It's like something that we should just inherently do. But I think in this world is much harder to do because, you know, we might not, you know, drinking soda or doing this, and it's hard to say. But I don't truly, being annoying, have the level of like experience or knowledge to tell you like how to hydrate, but it is just very important. It's something that we do focus on.
I think there's always this like stigma where it's like you can always push your body further, and it's just a mindset thing. How fragile is the body in comparison, like in comparison to how adaptable it is? Like,
It's good fucking question actually, because we have this a lot in physio, which is like, how bad is it? How fragile am I? And you know, we look at it. It's such.
there's
I
always
could
like,
literally talk about this for hours. It's mad. We are so much stronger than I think we give ourselves credit for. I think especially in the world now. I think the reason is that pain has become this big buzzword that it's bad. Pain is really bad. It's like run away from pain, run towards pleasure. I think I saw that in a Netflix thing about over-the-counter pain meds or something. You know, running away from pain, running towards pleasure. We look at studies of athletes and we relate pain to function. And there was a study a while ago that was volleyball players in the US, female volleyball players, roughly through their whole season of playing are in probably 5 to 8 out of 10 pain through their like training sort of games. Rafa Nadal was playing with an injured foot for years and had a lot of pain. You look at interviews, he was saying that. And these guys are actively playing on injuries or actively playing on joints that hurt. And yes, they have some outcomes, but look how resilient they are. They've got this huge capacity to train and do things, even with this level of injury or pain. What's amazing about our body, and I think we all know from jiu-jitsu or the gym or sickness, is that it's got this inherent ability to just adapt to stress. That is literally what we are. We're just a stress adapter. You know, if you, let's say suddenly you are walking, you live next to work and suddenly you move to a place where it's 20 miles away and you're walking up a hill. Your body, because you have to get to work and use no public transport, you will adapt to that walk. Your body is designed to just adapt to the stress. That's what strength training is, adaptation to stress. You lift weights, you get stronger because the stress is the weight, right? So this sort of level of adaptability and resilience in our body is because our body is able to adapt to all these different stresses. And I think that there's a level of sort of, I'm losing track of the conversation now, I'm losing track of my thoughts, but there's this level of like poor sort of understanding in the world that we're really fragile and that we shouldn't be in pain and that we shouldn't have injuries. These are natural part of existing and a natural part of living. And the modern world allows us to sort of indulge these fears. So if you look at, I take it back to like hunter-gatherer times, which is a big thing for me because, you know, our bodies haven't adapted that much from those times. You know, our brains have massively, but I think, you know, body type similar to, you know, all those guys in, you know, thousands of years ago. If your knee hurt, you're either not getting food or you are getting food. There's no two options. You know, you've got to either go and get food for your family or you starve to death. So we were able to push through much more injurious and sort of painful things and push through them and recover because we've got more of this resilience. That's more that mental resilience because we didn't have the sort of comfortability or that, you know, the sort of modern world allowed us to just call an Uber to pick us up or take us there. So there was a lot less contextual like fragility. So, you know, what I mean by that is it wasn't a case of like, my knee's really bad, I shouldn't do this. It was a case of, oh, my knee's bad, I have to do this. And actually what we find is that they were probably able to do it anyway and were able to recover from it because the body would adapt to it anyway. But what happens now is we apply a lot of contextual factors to pain or to injury, and it creates this narrative in our mind that it's dangerous and it's bad. And then what we do is we actively avoid something that's going to injure us.
It's like the path of least resistance.
Path of least resistance. Like, why would you want to be in pain? It's like, it's moronic. Like, it makes total sense, right? But it's because we don't necessarily have to expose ourselves to things that would necessarily create us pain, because our lives are quite easy nowadays, or easier. I mean, obviously there's mental stress, financial stress, all of these things, but it's not like we have to walk out and get food and our knees swollen. The body will adapt. That's what it's designed to do. And yes, it does fail to adapt, and that's when you would break your leg or you would have further injury. But in the grand scheme of things, we've got this infinite sort of ability to adapt, and it's how we apply our own personal experience to the injury that I think probably influences it more than is the physical injury itself, I would say.
I guess the question is very similar to a burnout, but then how do you know when it's time to push through that pain and when it's time to like rest up and not stress it anymore so we can heal?
So in clinic, we use the traffic light system to, like, this is getting very clinical now, but I think it's quite useful bit of information to give, because we don't necessarily understand pain that well. Like if you haven't, let's say me and you have both got a knee injury, I've had mine scanned and looked at by a surgeon or looked at by a physio, and you don't, and you haven't, and we both have the same pain. I know exactly what's structurally wrong, whereas you just know what you're physically feeling. So I'm going to have more insight into what I can do because I understand that, okay, that ligament's injured, so this movement is going to be more dangerous. Whereas you don't know, so you just go based on how you feel. I tend to find that the less information people have on their injury, the better they tend to perform.
Really?
Ignorance is bliss to a certain extent. So I've never been that seriously injured. I've had like niggles when I was playing sport at school, but like the knee injury that I had in November last year was like, pretty bad. It was, few ligaments, few muscles. And as a physio, I get a bit paranoid because I know exactly what the ligament can do and what it can do. So when I have my MRI and I see my doctor and he tells me about what's wrong, I'm like, shit, this is really bad. Whereas if I hadn't had an MRI and I hadn't had anyone tell me what's wrong, I would have just gone, because I had no pain. Oh, it hurts. I'll just train next week. Okay, maybe my outcomes would have been different, and they probably would have, because I might have caused myself more serious injury. But I would have had less anxiety attached to my injury because I wasn't as knowledgeable about what was going on inside it. So I think it's that fact of how we contextualize the pain and how we sort of analyze it in our own personal experience to relate it to what we're doing.
Does that change the way you deliver it to patients? Because if you're like, you want to get them, you want them to do the work, but then if you're like saying like, fuck, this is fucking bad, and it's going to cause anxiety, like, is there a way in which you kind of...
It's balancing the person that's in front of you, I think, is the big thing. Like, if I've got someone who's extremely anxious and who is maybe more hypervigilant and really analytical and wants to know the information, I'll tell them in a way that is sensible and sensitive to that person. I'm not going to say, oh my God, your ligament is the worst I've ever seen in my 7-year career, and if you walk down the stairs, it's going to blow up. We don't use that inflammatory language anymore. What we do is we give them all the information and let them assess the risk, because that's what it's about. It's coaching them. It's not telling them necessarily. Obviously, if you've got a broken foot and you start jumping, it's going to make it worse. So I'm going to say, don't do that. But it's about trying to be sensitive with how they feel. Had a patient call me this morning and was like, I've really hurt my shoulder, but they're a manual labourer. And I can't stop working. So what do I do in that situation with that patient? How do I, maybe the gold standard thing is to say, rest it, do this exercise, take this medication, whatever it may be. But this person doesn't have a physical choice. Their livelihood relies on them working. So then what we do is we use the traffic light system to understand what their pain's like. So we go through the diagnosis, we know what's wrong with them, we've done all the due diligence prior. But I call them and I say, right, so you've got the green light, which is 0 to 3. You can work within that as much as you want. It means that your pain is between a 0 and a 3. You don't have any pain following the activity, and it doesn't affect you later on. That's green. Green to go. Great. Easy to work. We can do what you want. Then we look at orange. So let's say he was painting the wall. That's green. Doesn't hurt. Then he's lifting up a paint can. It goes into orange. Orange is like 3 to 6, 3 to 7, depending on the models you use. And that's maybe pain that lasts a bit higher on the scale, lasts a little bit longer post-activity, 10 to 15 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the condition, it changes. And then maybe has some effect on their functionality after, but isn't perpetuating into the next day or into the night. And then you've got red, where let's say this guy is now hammering in nails on the roof. And then we go, right, so he's in now 9 out of 10 pain, between a 7 and a 10. It's affecting him now when he's drinking coffee or driving home 6 hours after working, and he's now not able to sleep that night. So then we use those light system to determine what he's doing and if it's causing him more harm than good. And then we try to scale his activity within those green, orange and red lights, basically. And we can use that for jiu-jitsu as well.
Yeah.
You know, if you come back with an injury, because saying you're going to be pain-free is a bit naive.
Yeah.
Especially with jiu-jitsu. You know, have you ever not hurt after a session? Pretty lucky if you haven't.
No, I was, especially after yesterday, I was a bit in pain though. Had some tough rolls though.
Neck stiff, but you know, let's say let's just make a case study out of you right now. Last night we were doing De La Riva entry, weren't we, into the side, and we were fiddling around with the heel hook. Mm-hmm. Let's say I'd ripped a heel hook a little bit too intensely because we have a bit of nice competition last night, and you're like, that was a 4 or 5 out of 10. Shit. And I go, right, mate, let's look at the traffic lights. I sit you down, and you know, I understand what a heel hook would injure, so we understand. And then you're training, and you're like, oh, I'm getting to a 5, 6 out of 10 now. You're passing the guard. I'm kneeling. You're like, oh shit, this doesn't feel right. It's painful. And then you sit out on the mat, and you're like, fuck. 10 minutes later, still sore. Right, we know now that orange is moving into that red, right? Whereas if we do the same scenario, and you know, we do a heel hook, and I've maybe just irritated a bit of the muscle or a bit of the ligament or something, not anything too serious. And you're like, we're rolling, and you say, oh, it's like a 2 out of 10. I don't really feel it. I stop, and it doesn't hurt. Then we're like, right, green to go. So it's that, and using that kind of pragmatic approach to you know, understand injuries, because you know, if I had to sit here and wait until my body was completely pain-free to get back to jits, I would not be training.
Yeah.
So it's just naive, basically.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I just wanted to go back as well to we've discussed what did we discuss before? Because I wanted to make when I went to yours last month for my groin.
Yeah.
This is when you were running a lot.
Yeah, that's when I was running a lot. And so when he said that physio sometimes can give an out for you to not exercise. So for example, I'll give you an example that
something I would say.
Now you mentioned that like you should avoid running a bit while your groin is healing.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed that I think someone asked me to go for a run or something. It's like, nah, I can't go running.
How is the hip actually, by the way?
It's a bit better now.
I paid him to say that.
It's a bit better. No, it's a bit better. So, and I'm an idiot as well, because he said don't do Muay Thai, and I went to do Muay Thai last Friday, and I did a few kicks, and it just completely ripped my groin, and then the next day I really felt it. Oh, so it was the traffic light.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, I just clocked it, and yeah, the next day was really bad, like really bad.
So that'd be red. That's
Yeah.
red. So because your pain tolerance as a combat athlete is going to be quite high, right? You know, naturally, like I don't really listen to myself because it's part of pushing through it. So then we look at the traffic lights. Like you may never get to a 10 out of 10. Some people's 10 out of 10 is different, but you knowing that it's gone into the next day is a danger sign, and that's not necessarily healthy. And there are some injuries that we allow that, but the majority, and we have analysed your injury and we know what it's about. But yeah, it's really having that in your mind can probably save you a lot of the time from more serious things, because it gives you as I've said from the start of this podcast, protocol criteria to work with to know where you are, as opposed to that felt fine and then just work through it.
Yeah. I wanted to, but yeah. Then so I went there on Friday.
Yeah, this is to Muay Thai.
Yeah, Muay Thai. It was really hurting. But then I think I went to Jiu-Jitsu the next day, but it wasn't as bad. Oh, yeah, so I went Jiu-Jitsu the next day. I was doing the warm up, and do you know that warm up where you swing your leg?
Yeah, you open the gap.
Yeah. And that was really bad. I just had to stop, and I sat down for the rest of it, and I was limping for the rest of the day.
Yeah. So,
but then the next day I felt better.
So a great example of like how, you know, managing it more poorly. Not that that's a bad thing, because trust me, if everyone did everything I said, I wouldn't have a job. So, you know, if you all do what your physio says, you won't have to pay more money. That's what I normally say. But yeah, great example. And this is when, right, so let's look back to what we've said previously, like my 3 things, like ego, training partner, intensity. Could you have chosen your training partner a bit better for jits, maybe? Could you have used less of your ego, maybe having a bad day? I don't know. You don't tend to have many bad days, but...
Well, that was definitely ego on Friday because I was on the pads. There was 1 round and I already felt that like I kicked and something clicked.
But you're like, fuck, I want to push through this.
Yeah, but I was like, fuck, I'll just finish. And then he's like, all right, 1 more round. I was like, oh shit, I have to push it through now. And then I remember that second time when I did, I just kicked twice and
Done.
I was like, fuck, like that was
And
really
then,
hurt.
and then this is the culture, right? It's like, don't be a pussy. And, you know, 2-3 years Dagestan, that builds pretty good wrestlers. But I think in like general kind of the world of like, we've all got full-time jobs, we want to live, you know, good life in our 70s and 80s. I think it's being empathetic and compassionate to your body and saying to someone, I'm not going to roll with you. So like my big thing following my knee injury was not rolling with people bigger than me for a while. I've gone back a little bit, but just being, it's advice I give to patients and practitioners myself, because it's like you are exposing yourself to more load than your body's used to. They're much heavier than you. And that's an ego thing. Like, you know, there's plenty of big guys in the gym that I want to roll with because they're giving me the eyes and telling me that I'm, you know, not been a bit of a bitch because my knee hurts, you know, but it's like, I want to be here in 30 years. You won't with that attitude. And that's how I look at it.
Always tap early.
Always tap early.
Tap early. Depends. No, I'm joking.
Thank you so much for coming on this pod.
That's all right.
That was really, really,
good.
really
Absolute
interesting,
legend.
man.
Yeah, that was really interesting. You're like obviously practicing more like BJJ stuff on Instagram. Is there anything you want to plug on here for yourself? Or?
At Grapple Therapy, that's my Instagram.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have an in-person clinic and I have an online clinic. But yeah, I mean, just, you know, if you've got any questions, we can discuss it and anything we've sort of reached from here. I've got some cheesy stuff on social media, nothing too exciting. But
that's great.
yeah, it's just, the final message is like, just, you know, you want to have consistency in your training and that kind of, you know, good intensity. And I think it's just listen to your body and listen to people around you who know more about it. And it's taking that ego out of the question, tap early, don't be a dick, basically. And that's, yeah, the parting words I'd probably say. Right, pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Legends. Really good.
Thank you so much.
Legend. Good to see you, boys.